Good afternoon. We're here today with gratitude. Thank God for allowing us to honor, remember, and always love Bob. We are so grateful for the love he gave us and how he touched us in his incredibly special way. Thank you all for being here so that we can properly memorialize Bob, express our love in return. May God bless us today and always. Help us to realize that without our divine creator, and those of you that are here, you never really know what true gratitude is. Thank you for your beautiful gift, Bob. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the life of Bob. Yes, it is difficult to gather for this reason, but in the midst of pain, we give great thanks. Gifted us with the caring and love of Bob as we hold this service. Remember all of the glorious times that we spent with him. We recount all of the blessings we've received through his life. We thank you, Lord, for all of the wonderful ways that you have used Bob in the lives of every person.
It's just this one, right?
That should be off. Time of remembrance.
And the bottom?
Dr. Robert Leeds. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I had the pleasure of speaking to Taylor for several minutes the other day to try to get some information to put together for this service. And unfortunately for me, I did not know Bob. But based upon the conversation that I had, he was so much to so many people. And I think what most underscored our conversation was the simple facts of he was a man that provided incredible, gentle guidance. And he did this with intent of harmony and respect. And I think the biggest message that I received as well is that he truly loved his family. So without further ado, I would like to first introduce Bill. Oh, hey, Gary's here. Hi, Gary. Gary, get up here. It's your turn. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for being late, for crying out loud. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hear from words from Mr. Gary Jacob. Thank you.
Hello, family. Hello, friends. It's a great honor to be asked to. Oh, is it not on? It worked for you. Hello? Okay, there we go. Okay, all right. Just want to say hello to family, my dear cousins especially, and to all the friends and anyone joining us who's not here today. It's really a great honor to give me this privilege to be able to talk about my my beloved uncle, whom I had a very special relationship with. And what I want to talk to you about is, I think my uncle had a way to approach life, a way that he leaves us as a legacy. And I want to celebrate this tremendous loss for our family and express my love and gratitude for this. My Uncle Bob, Dr. T, as he was called and affectionately by many, I met him when I was about 10 years old. My Aunt Bonnie brought me down to their flat to spend some time with my cousin Will. And my first memories of him stick with me today. I remember coming into their small kitchen, and he knew that this was kind of unusual for me, sort of like didn't know him. And he took me to the stove and was making me some food, and he, instead of trying to sort of, push the moment, he gently brought me up to the stove and we cooked together. And then he brought me down to play Pong. I don't know if y'all remember that old video game. We used to have a dot bouncing back on the paddles. And I didn't really know how to do it. So he spent a lot of time just showing me how to do it, to encourage me. And this is one of the things that I'm going to talk about, is he would advocate and encourage you to take the time to take with yourself and risk. And this showed up just a few years later when they had the wedding in their backyard. He knew I was kind of interested in playing with cameras, and he had this really expensive, cool camera. So he encouraged me to sort of play around with it when I was with him. And when they had their wedding in the backyard, he asked me to be their photographer. He knew I was nervous, very young, but he encouraged me to do it and take the risk. Again, that started young, and he did this all through my life, through every phase. For me, he would show up again in my life during sophomore year of college. I had a health issue, had gotten mono, was out for like 6 months. Some other issues occurred. And I just wasn't sure about my place in life as I went to college. I was going to a big school and didn't quite fit me. So he, again, showed up in my life, and he talked to me about, well, maybe for you, maybe an urban school. And maybe for you, because I loved working. Always, whatever I did, I worked hard. He said, for you, maybe work while you go to school. So he encouraged me to take a different path. And I came then to Chicago, and he helped guide me towards applying to a local school, DePaul, to going to business school there. And then when they needed some help at the business, I showed up, my aunt had me help out, and he noticed again how hungry I was to learn. So he gave me again encouragement, opportunity to take a risk. And in that experience with him, I began to really flourish. He was a key manager there, and there were many people in his group that he encouraged me to get to know and learn different ways of doing things in the world. And he would share his friends, even though he's my uncle and older than me, he would share his friendships with these individuals, Dr. Heller, Dr. Savlani, Karen Weissman, other key people in his life. And I began to learn from them, and he was generous in that way and would share what he knew and who he knew. Later, the family had a very special vacation home, which I'm sure you'll hear about from my cousin Will, but a very special place in the British Virgin Islands, Tortola. It was like a cottage along the sea. And for my honeymoon, he gave me the most wonderful gift. I'd heard all the stories, but I'd never really been there. So he arranged for me to go there for my honeymoon. I'll never forget landing on the small airstrip on the island and being sort of taken in the Jeep to the area, opening the door and hearing the voices of my cousins and my aunt and uncle in my head, touching the things they touched, eating where they ate, walking in the waters that they swam and on the beach, and doing the things they did, and they were just with me, and he was with me. And many times when the family would share memories, of their time there, I could connect to it and I could feel him because he loved that place so much. Another special story that shows how strong my uncle would advocate for others has to do with their very personal decision to expand the family and adopt my beloved cousin Carmen. In that process, they had a challenge that hit them. They had lost the key papers and documents and things that would allow them to leave the country and return with Carmen. And a young man by the name of Mihai Pradescu, a Romanian young man who's working at the hotel as a bellboy, he became aware of this. He became aware of their trauma, and he listened and he advocated for the family. He took a risk, just like Bob does, the advocate. He listens. Bob would innovate, take a risk. Mihai did this in his own way, found them in the city. Those documents could have been sold on the black market. They were valuable. And when Mihai had a change in his life, Bob and the families that were involved with the adoption invited him, took a risk on him. They sponsored him in his path to citizenship to the United States. And that so touched him that when his first son was born, he named him Robert. So there's a little boy in Romania with the name of your parents, just like Robert Cole was here. Excuse me. Years after Bob and I worked so closely together, even after when I moved on, my uncle helped me further our relationship to deepen. We became like peers and mutual advisors with each other. We would meet sometimes for lunch or when we'd see through family parties. And what I noticed about him is we had our own special shorthand, in many ways like a second father. He and I had a unique way of talking and listening to each other, jabbing each other sometimes, and to support with each other. He would share with me personal things and business things going on with him. And it just felt like a glove when I would see him again, like just someone I just really knew really well. I had spent thousands of hours with him, many hours. I treasure the times I spent with him, my memory with him for the rest of my life. But I also want to share some amazing things that he did. These are things that I witnessed, and these are the stories of others that have been told to me from aunts, from his business partners, and from many that he has touched. He was a champion for the underserved, the underinsured, the working man. We may not know the total impact this man had on people. When I tell you this, this may surprise you how much it impacts. I'm just going to take you back to medical school. When he was going through medical school, he had to make ends meet by driving a CTA bus from the south end of the city into the central district, which is where many of the hospitals were, the good hospitals with the good care. And he told me he noticed something. He noticed the underserved, when they would have a medical need, particularly an urgent one, they couldn't get care. They had to get on a bus. They had to go all the way into the center of the city to get care. And this stuck with him. This irritated him. This advocacy in him. He also noticed the way that people were treated when they were hurt. He saw the mechanics being injured, the bus drivers being injured. He noticed how the employers would go after them like they were criminals because they were hurt, that they would treat them poorly. They wouldn't get them back to work like you would a high-priced athlete or important person. These two lessons appear several times later in his life. He also moonlighted in an ER in which he saw in that experience how we all, when we go to an emergency room, back then would receive whatever doctor decided to show up to make a few extra bucks or a very young resident. There was no emergency medicine. There was no first responders like we know it today. So he and his cohort, Dr. Anzinger, etc., They created the first emergency medicine doctor. They created the first boards to standardize the care so that when you go there, they are able to treat you, to act quickly, to triage you. He created the first paramedic program as the project director for Northwestern to train those medics so they can triage you and get you care quickly. And he knew the underserved went there. He knew that's how they accessed. And so what does Bob do? He doesn't sit around. He doesn't fret about it. He takes action. He innovates. He takes all of this knowledge and he goes to the inner city hospitals and he builds the program out with him and his partners to deliver this care into the hospitals that you would just pass by normally. So when you see that red cross outside the ER, that's my uncle, that's your father. He helped create that for people. My uncle did this all with such a passion. He could have been an orthopedic doctor. He began as the head resident of the orthopedic program. In his path for moonlighting the ER, he found his true calling. And we all know he loved his business and loved his practice, but most of all, he loved taking care of people in need, providing guidance for the time of need, and encouraging everyone to take a risk. He did this again for his own physicians when they realized that because they stood up this business, because they were taking care of us, they were taken advantage of sometimes by predatory lawyers. So what did Bob do? Again, he didn't fret about it. He took action. He helped create a way for the physicians to manage that and to keep themselves safe from this predatory practices. There's so much to say, honestly, but if I were to completely unburden myself, it would take a week. Really. He's such a big man, Dr. Bob. I'll say this, simply this. Thank you, Uncle Bob, Dr. T, for all you taught me, all you showed me by example, and gave to me from your heart and your mind, and for your love. You were like a second father to me. I will always be grateful that I had the privilege of knowing you. Rest now in eternal peace until we meet again. Amen.
And at this time, I'll have Will come up and deliver the eulogy.
So, on behalf of my sisters, Taylor and Carmen, my brothers, Cole, JD, and Drew, we just want to thank you all for coming today to celebrate Dad's life, share memories, of our experiences with him, and just really have a positive experience for everything that he's brought to us. We know him through a couple different personas. I mean, Gary kind of mentioned a couple of them. I mean, he is, at his core, he's Dr. T, right? He's then Bob. I think it's right. I think when he was really young, he was Bobby and probably ditched that as quickly as possible, or whatever his nickname might have been. But I thought he told me it was Bobby. But then it's Uncle Bob, Gramps, Grandpa T, and then, of course, Dad. So let's talk about Dr. T for just a little bit. And I appreciate Gary did a great job. If you look at the monitor when it was playing before, he just had a passion for medicine right out of the gate. I mean, Illinois State Science Fair, he got into breeding fruit flies to see how he could genetically alter, their eye color. And how could you come up with hairless fruit flies? I didn't know that was a thing, but that was really one of the things that got him into kind of medicine. He went to school at Northwestern, got his went to med school at U of I, and then actually started over at Rush. And there he actually received numerous awards for orthopedics And I think it was actually on a talk show. It's like a 70s game talk show if you see the picture. But he was receiving a lot of notoriety for being able to come up with metal rods and orthotics, that could be used, in future generations, and did a lot of research with monkeys, of all things, on that. And then, of course, he started getting into emergency medicine. And my godmother, Marie, actually convinced my mother to actually work with Bob, or consider an interview with Bob, because as fun as Bob also was a challenge, I think, in some of the medical establishments. And so it took a lot of folks going through and deciding if they wanted to work and interview for Bob. I actually find it ironic that during that interview was the first time I met Dad, because there was nowhere for me to go, and Marie got on call, and so I was in the interview. And I knew that for years, because I know the first time I met Dad, I was told he saved my life, because I was choking on a lifesaver, and Dr. T just pulled me legs up and got the lifesaver out. So totally knew that, was always appreciative. Yeah, I found out like 2 months ago, he's the one that gave me the lifesaver. Like, couldn't shut me up enough, so he gave me a lifesaver, and okay. So obviously, Gary, we talked a little bit about then, kind of helping to specialize. And that was the whole thing. I didn't know he actually helped create that first board, but I just knew kind of what he was doing, and through, eventually, what became EMSCO in terms of revolutionizing ERs, right? Hospitals didn't want to deal with them. That's the worst part about it. And he would take the ERs. They would sublease it to him, and he would staff them kind of with the docs, and then all the different financial encoding and whatnot that went through that. And I was sharing with some of the folks that he worked with at EMSCO and others, kind of growing up, and then you see the movie Office Space, and we're convinced he was Bill Lumbergh, okay? Just walking around in his 90s tie, and he'd have his coffee mug, and like, yeah. And we all know he had the 911 Porsche, so the question was if he had a reserved spot or not. So not sure about that. But yeah, as Gary said, he then continued to innovate. Work care for workman's comp. I mean, I won't go through them all, but if you just take a look at the different business cards that are over there, you can just see the different things. I mean, after I was in school, I couldn't keep track, honestly, of the different companies and things that he was doing. I do find it pretty amazing, though, that in his 60s, he had to go back and take the boards again, the full boards, because he forgot to submit paperwork and do some of the basic recertification stuff. So he's the second oldest person, apparently, to pass the boards, which I find is amazing. But eventually, towards the end, he worked at a company, Health Strategies. And so I know many of his patients, some of the ones who were streaming this for that couldn't make it, because he would go around the southwest suburbs and treat those who were homebound, and he didn't have that good access to care, and he really enjoyed that. It was for those that couldn't be here, for those that couldn't be here, please know how much he truly cared about you. It really energized him, probably the past 8-10 years, and I was surprised me. He's like, yes, I find it soothing. I start my day, I put in, Bocelli, and I drive around to the different, my patients, and I see them, and I have great stories, and I put on Bocelli, and I come on back, which I thought was truly touching, and also I did not expect him to be listening to Bocelli. But it's really through all that, if you're actually wondering why we're here, like at Dames, yeah, he lived in the end 20 minutes away in Plainfield, but he couldn't figure it out. Like, okay, why? Well, it's because so many of his patients were actually around here. And if one of his patients passed, he would come to the funerals, and he would come console, the family and talk about his experiences. And through the multiple occasions of being here that he met the folks, and I think this ended up being, he just knew, this was a few years ago, he just knew that when this time came, this was the place out of all of them he really wanted to be at. So the thing about Dr. T is he also can be called like Dr. House, right? This guy was a walking, medical book. You could give him 3 symptoms. He'd tell you exactly what to do. We've got quite a few examples. Even before, well, first of all, any one of the siblings and cousins, and probably 3/4 of you in this room, probably have a grotesque picture of something, like some ailment, some cut, some this, on your phone right now that you emailed to Dr. T. and probably gave you the diagnosis within like 30 seconds to a minute of reading it. But even pre-cell phones and all that, he did this. He would give constant advice to my daughter Jackie and all her ailments. But I'll never forget my nephew Asher. It was many moons ago, again, no smartphones. Thanksgiving, joyous time, I'm twirling him around like you're not supposed to do it, kid, apparently, and I dislocate my nephew's elbow. This is Thanksgiving. So obviously, Kathy's sister, my sister-in-law is freaked out. Nikki in the back there was a little freaked out, so I had to call Dad. I'm like, what do I do? It's Thanksgiving. Like a immediate care? He's like, oh, no. He's like, how old is he again? About how tall? Okay, so all right. So go to his elbow here, put 2 fingers here. You're going to get ready to turn and pull real quick. Oh, by the way, tell Nikki and Laura to turn around and then pull. It worked. It's like it didn't have to see it, and he could do the telemedicine and tell you how to do that. This is a little out of order, but his own condition, he's so self-aware of medicine in his body that I've told some of you, I'm pretty certain he bought himself 5 extra weeks. He was in not the best shape come Memorial Day, and he'd sit there and keep patting his tummy. He's like, yep, I'm gonna fix this. I think I can do this, and he did. He was able to kind of clear things out enough that allowed him to enjoy at least another 5 month or so kind of with us. But then there's just other things, like my brother JD splits his chin, like I think he were 3 or 4, and it's like, did we go to the ER? Did we go? Because I don't think there was even immediate care. So no, I'll bring home sutures. And if I remember right, he forgot the sutures, and so he just sewed them up with needle and thread on the kitchen counter. That's what he does. Yeah, you still have that scar. Carson, hits the back of his head, when we were out doing the go-karts. Does he get sutures? No. Does he get medical glue? No, he just got glue and helped glue it back together in Carson's head, so hopefully you're doing okay, it was non-toxic. And even just things like he'd chip his tooth. He'd go to the drugstore, get super glue, put it back in. I mean, that's who he was. But again, Dr. House, even his own condition, it was almost a medical curiosity for him because he was determined, to get to the bottom. And I know he did that, for all of us. And Gary kind of mentioned, Dr. T, really wanted to improve, quality of trauma and healthcare for all, especially those that really didn't have access to healthcare. And that truly was his life's mission to the end. Okay, so let's switch to Bob, right? So Bob, as you know, grew up in, born February 26, 1945. Kind of grew up in the Grange. The typical, you've seen the stories, was really into Boy Scouts, and fishing, from an early age, and he would do that with his father, heavily into baseball, which, clearly some of those things, transcended down to us. One of the stories you can see a little bit of the example of the style of home he grew up in, as well as a little bit of the deviousness of Bob, was the story of one of his homecomings. So apparently he was not allowed to go to homecoming because he was grounded for a month because he missed curfew by like 30 minutes, for a legitimate reason. It wasn't like it just happened before. He was grounded for a month, and homecoming was like the second to last day of this grounding period. So, okay, well, can I go to a movie or something? And they felt bad. Okay, yes, you can go to a movie. So what does he do? He's got a suit tucked in the basement. He goes around the door, goes around the side of the house, gets the suit, dresses somewhere else, goes to homecoming, has a great time. Problem is, on the way home, he was late, and so he was speeding, and he went flying over railroad tracks, and a cop was on the other side. So the cop pulls him in, said, okay, so I'm gonna come with me, takes him to the police station, call his parents for curfew. He lucked out because Grandpa Tetik said, I'm not wasting the time with him, just send him home. And so he went home, got out of the suit, got back into his normal clothes, threw the suit in the garage, and managed to have a homecoming without Grandma or Grandpa Tetik ever knowing. About the cars. He was really excited about minivans as well. He saw examples, that beige and brown Volkswagen, but he loved the Toyota Land Cruiser because it had the first refrigerator in between the driver and the passenger seat. even like a month ago, he's like, remember what I liked about that car? I'm like, it was the fastest 4-cylinder? He's like, no, the fridge was great. It's like, okay. But of course, there was the Porsches, right? He had about 6 or 7. He loved to race up in Wisconsin. He kind of rebuilt his first one. We've been counting. He's had a couple silvers, a black. He had an awesome license plate, if you saw, RET72, which he would have kept that. And then he's progressed the burgundy, and there's a white one that we have a picture of. He doesn't remember. I'm like, there's something you don't remember. Well, clearly you had a white Porsche. And there's the 911 that we all know and love. He was a huge sports fan, obviously, and if you knew him, you knew the drill. So he loved the Bears, but he would not go to a game anymore after October. It's too cold. It's not worth it. He's gonna stay home. Baseball, he was an avid Sox fan, but I won't watch that. I only see them in person. Baseball's not worth watching on TV. And basketball, you don't have to watch it until the fourth quarter. Why are you wasting your time? On the first 3. That was Bob's words to live by there. One thing is, he didn't hold on to a lot of stuff, and it was just kind of funny that he and I were talking one day, and he's like, where was that place we'd go to? Eric would be there sometimes. Joel, you were there for a couple. We do all the baseball, White Sox seat drafts there, and then we'd go there occasionally for, before Bulls games. I'm like, I can't for the life of me, I don't remember things. And he's like racking his brain, and then I come back like 3 weeks later. He's like, I found it, and he still had a matchbook from Carlucci's down on the West Loop. I'm like, no kidding, okay. And he was very upset that they closed during COVID. And just in terms of sports, he was very special. Like when we were out for Taylor's graduation in college, we happened to be 1991, and that's when the Bulls were playing the Lakers, and it was Game 5. And he's like, you know what? We're here. I actually can get relatively cheap seats. I'm like, yeah. 4th row behind the Bulls bench, during that game. And he actually, my kids may laugh at this. I haven't told him. He actually encouraged me after the game. He's like, go run on the court. And I did. And I'm holding on to Jordan as Cliff Livingston is taking him off the court. And I turned around and, did Dad go down? No. He just sat there and smiled and kind of, was enjoying kind of watching the whole thing. Competitiveness. Bob was very competitive. Quite a few injuries during the EMSCO softball parties. I think it was the collision with Heller at home plate and a few broken ribs that I remember kind of ended that tradition. He was an avid racquetball, and he went to state for tennis, and he was always up for a game for us. But I can tell you, anyone that's played with him, almost all of us have been hit by a racquetball or a tennis ball on multiple occasions, and we know it was not accidental. 100%. But in all seriousness, JD and Drew, were able to follow in Dad's footsteps, with their kind of high school tennis careers, which was great. Sarcasm? Probably don't need to say much there. You all have your memories there, but if you noticed, if anyone had a clue of what picture of him on the ground, what that was, and he sprawled out there. I don't know too many people that almost die and then think to have fun with it about a month later. So the story is he was walking down with a lounger basket, slipped on the 3 stairs, cracked his ribs, and said it was too strong enough of a guy to say, I'm going to go and get anything taken about it. I will just have a glass of vodka and go to bed, and I'll be fine. Well, the issue is the broken rib punctured the spleen, and the next morning, my mother had to resuscitate him because he was, dead on the living room floor. So there's a story that he came back and they took him away, and he's explaining it to me. He's like, let me show you. And the reenactment is what that was. I don't know too many people that would do that. We all know we love chocolate. He somehow went from a milk chocolate to a dark chocolate guy. And all of a sudden, in the end, he likes snow caps. So I don't even know what those would be classified for, but he ate those a lot to the end. So we know we're going to honor him. He loved chocolate chip cheesecake. And some of us, like William Riley, are very good at that cheesecake. So we'll expect a lot of that. And then German chocolate Swiss cream pie. That's always my favorite. For those that knew him in your houses, if you were going to guess a favorite color, you would have guessed burgundy. You're wrong. It is blue. Burgundy was a close second. They were always matched together. But Carmen was able to spend time with him and kind of go through some of those trivia things, and whatnot, which was just fascinating to understand. You might know he was in the choir, for a lot of his childhood, and then he loved the piano, and so many a times, he would be just up there kind of banging away, tried to get us to all learn to play the piano, pretty much all failed at it, but he would, and JD and Drew remember this, he would actually pretend he was Ray Charles and play "Baby What I Say," and then he would just make up the words, as he was playing, but he had a melody and he had those two kind of dancing and going. But music was important to him. Another funny thing is, if you asked him what his favorite musician was, we all would have said Barry Manilow, hands down. No, that was number 2. It was Elton John. And then the Supremes from his young days, Billy Joel, and then Bocelli. And then the other thing, is I've been thinking about this for some time. You hear those songs, but one song kept coming to my head. And hear me out on this. But the song was "To All the Girls I've Loved Before." And not the Willie Nelson version, I'm talking the Julio Iglesias version. Dad with the tan and the shirt off, type of. And the reason I say that is because, think about why so many of us are here. It's really the relationships that Dad had, throughout his life with the people he loved. Obviously with Johnny, Taylor, and Cole, came into this world. When he met my mother, well, he inherited me, and then JD and Drew and Carmen, and after that it's like, what does that mean? We had the Tetik clan, we had the Jacob clan, we had the Ackroth clan, and we would have massive family kind of parties, whether they Christmas or christenings, or it seemed like once a quarter there was something going on at our house. Or one of the Jacobs or the Ackross houses, and that led to the different personas of who he was as more of a family person. I know as a brother, I'm gonna stick with Bobby, but if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but he had a lot of good memories kind of growing up. Sean reminded me, I totally see this summer that they had to drive with no cell phones, no technologies for 2 months across most of the 48 states, and they played competitive war back seat. I can imagine how fun that must have been, especially if he lost. What I also didn't know about him in his youth was apparently Grandma Rose liked to dress him and Shar up identically. So I haven't found those pictures yet. So Shar, if you've got some, I know we want to see them. Then there's Uncle Bob. I mean, Deb, Kath, Scott. He enjoyed all of the time together. He really enjoyed, the times at Clear Lake, and you saw, kind of some of the pictures there. We all wish we could spend more time. But I do know, throughout the holidays and all the Christmases, I can't remember how we traded them off, but all the different, family events at our different houses. Mark, he really enjoyed watching you and giving you guidance through your kind of career in medicine and the different kind of stages you were going through. Mark actually shared with me, he has a couple memories. Christmas was chaos, at our house. Okay, a lot of fighting, a lot of arguments. Especially everyone had a good time. But Mark remembers repeatedly, as after things were settled and chaos was going on in the room, he'd go in the kitchen, and Dad would just be stirring, and he'd be singing "O Tannenbaum" to himself in his therapy. And he looked at Mark and just said, "This is going to be you one day." Gary, obviously, another son. I mean, he really, the myriad of kind of collaboration and the strategic thinking and the partnership that you guys had, I know was very, very important to him. I think it would, help both of you flourish during that time. And Joel, he loved you as another son. He's helped you and me be close to about brothers as could be kind of during those times. And Joel got a trip in one of the Porsches. It was a 928, so Joel remembers the one that he only owned for a period of time, whizzing around Burr Ridge and Madison Street at about 130 miles an hour, hoping that we avoided the cops. Many cousins parties as a result of the integration of those clans. And last on Uncle Bob is Mihai. I mean, Gary touched on it best. Mihai, I know you're probably watching this. we love you. Thank you for everything you've meant to our family, helping out. And I know Dad felt you were part of our family, and wanted to make sure we could do everything we could to help you. Okay. Promise there's got a couple personas, but we'll get through them. Gramps. So I know, Blake, I know he really enjoyed his conversations with you as much as you enjoyed the conversations with him. The fact that you thought it was so cool, it is cool, talking to Grandpa and seeing the joy that he has in your interests, right? And the fact that he can actually talk and get into technical aspects, whether it's cars, tax law, apparently, and the fact that you and Dad had a bond over fashion sense, trust me, none of us else have gotten that. So kind of find that amazing. Carson, obviously, you guys have been fishing. And just how quickly you went to fishing at the lake yesterday. I know that was very special to him, as we all know fishing it was. And so heed the advice he told you and your dad and go catch the big effing fish, in the near term here. Grandpa T, so, Jackie, all the medical advice and coaching and whatnot, and he's very, very impressed and looks forward to watching you on your journey through med school and whatnot. He did make the joke to Jackie that, I have a book. It's called Grey's Anatomy. You may have heard of it. It's a book, not the TV show. And he was happy that she knew. And I think it just meant a lot to Jackie and everyone that he'd make it down for her infamous Super Bowl birthday parties, despite the long distance in the city. And William and AJ, he loved going to and hearing about the flag and the tackle football games. He enjoyed that. He went to as many as he could while he could. And I know he'll be watching down over your games. And for William, what I didn't remember was he actually ran track in high school. So although it was COVID and we would stream the videos, I'd send him a video of William doing track this year, and he'd be breaking it down. Oh yeah, he's got to get out of this game here. He's got to crouch down more. He's popping up too early. I mean, House was analyzing the track technique. Okay, so Dad, we all have plenty of memories of on the beach, playing football, just sprinting, seeing who could be faster than the other. Fishing, he wanted us fishing out of the gate. He took, Cole and I were salmon fishing with him apparently like when we were 7, 9, out on Lake Michigan. He got us into deep sea fishing pretty much any trip we went, we were on a boat. And it was great that as we all grown up and gone our separate ways and done stuff, he got us together for 2 different trips out to Westport, Washington to go kind of salmon fishing, which really meant a lot to getting us all back together. You saw the thing from Benihana's up there? If you're kind of wondering, that was starting point for almost many of our road rallies. So for whatever reason, because Dad likes speed and this seemed okay, he would take a car, I would take a car, and my mom would take a car. And we would race to see who got home from wherever we were having dinner that night. And that was a frequent occurrence. Jamie, Drew, and Carmen were petrified. One time, I won't get all the stories, but one time the cop pulled over and Dad's blaming Drew. He said, sorry, he's got gotta get home, for the kids. But we did a lot of road rallies, and only one time did Dad actually get ticketed for it. Fireworks. So you understand, we all love fireworks. He hated fireworks. So we'd go spend $300-400 of fireworks every summer and blow it off in the cul-de-sac, right? We set up elaborate shows. They accidentally fired fireworks into the grandparents one year. But the condition of doing the fireworks was I had to go to retro care with him and go see people with their fingers blown off or severe burns, somewhere about 2 or 3 weeks before July 4th every year. So when the time that the flaming parachutes landed on our neighbor's cedar roof and we had to bring the hose out, he just sat there and said, yeah, we're done. One of I think Terrible, my memories and picture, we did a lot of road trips. There was the trip up and down Highway 1, though, where the back of the car opened up and our precious cargo that we just got from like SeaWorld or Disneyland fell out the back. And Dad was not too keen about walking a quarter mile back to go get them, But he did. And so Cole got his black bear, I got my Goofy, and if you looked at the picture, Taylor, it actually is a horse. We weren't sure last night when we figured that out. There's the infamous RV trip, because again, trips, you like to go on trips, and it's probably a smart idea to take Taylor, Cole, and I, and JD on an RV trip from Chicago out to the East Coast and Gettysburg, all that, and back. Well, let's just say it probably wasn't more than 2 to 3 days in that there were golf clubs swinging at each other, a lot of argument going on, things being broken. So what happens? The fatherly treatment was, I'm done with you, I'm locking you in the RV, and we're going to stay in the night in the hotel. And so Taylor, Cole, and I, probably illegal today, were locked into an RV from the outside and told to figure it out by the next morning. A lot of Disney World trips, but that wasn't really Dad's jam, so as Taylor pointed out, they would actually sneak away, like many of us may do as well, to It's a Small World, to get away from it all and just sit on the ride and be peaceful while the rest of us got all Disney-fied. He did a lot of coaching of teams. He saw that. He loved coaching. Various baseball teams, softball teams. It was great to be his wingman for 2 or 3 years, coaching kind of JD and Drew with Dr. Z. Rafting. There's infamous. He loved the thrills. He was very frustrated the year, though, that he and Carmen got bounced from the raft. His big ego bruise, and each of them blamed each other, and it took a while for them to mend that, because he didn't ever see himself to be bounced out of a raft. Club Med. Sometime, if you haven't seen it, we'll show you the video, but Dad would get up and dance to the craziest things, and I guess because it was kid-orientated, we have a video of him dancing to Hands Up and Do You Wanna Dance, which were all his theme songs. And Dad being so smooth, he'd try to do like a wave, and it'd be like, and the funny thing was, our cousin Josh's bar mitzvah, like 10 years later, that song came on, or probably 15 years later, and I don't like to get up and dance in front of a crowd. The next thing you know, we were all dancing, doing the same dance over again at his bar mitzvah. Dad continued to pull us together. We had a great time in Utah. It was the Big Love compound that he actually found one house that could fit like 25 to 30 of us with an in-home theater, and and we just sat there and hung out and reunited and watched movies. And then of course had to get some fun. Took the ATVs out on the mountain and wrecked one or two, but yeah. And our last trip together was the Jamaica crazy trip. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. All of us got down to Jamaica. If you saw, that everyone's wearing the Listen to Bob shirts. And if you're wondering why, it's because he would, always say, well, why? Because the world would be a better place if everyone just listened to Bob. I know there's a lot of little memories, but I think the ones are just, if you didn't know, I just want people to realize, like, go-karts. I think we are probably got to be one of those families to ever get kicked out of multiple go-kart locations. It was like nonstop. We couldn't go anywhere without getting kicked out. The competitiveness, ramming? What do you mean we can't ram? I think one of my brothers got in trouble for ramming Dad in the family car. Like, who cares? It's Dad and my sister. Of course I'm going to ram them. And there was still the last go-kart race. It was actually out here in Joliet with the souped-up go-karts. He claims his car was on subpar. That's why he didn't win. Some of us still had accidents and blew out tires. And I'll be honest with you, who won that race is still in dispute. It's still in dispute. Just a couple last things. Some of our memories of him, Drew's, of course, was a joke we call like Marketplace. So think of Dad in finances, and we go to dinner, and Drew's like, first innocently asks, what does MP mean? Means you can't have it. Oh, okay. Drew goes in, next time we're at a nice restaurant. What does MP mean again, Dad? Means you can't have it. This went on 5 times or 6 times. So Drew actually won. He wore Dad down. And so, there's lobster, that's MP. And so Dad says, fine, get it. And all of a sudden Drew's like, oh my God, that was like $75. Like, holy crap. It was his unique way of teaching people how to learn, unless from going through it. he taught Kathy and I a lot, especially after we kind of graduated college. So we had a chance to spend quite a few days and evenings with Dad down in Tortola in the 2000s. He was just really giving like fatherly advice, worldly advice, career advice. As Kathy was kind of dealing with the passing of her father, at that time, as well as both of us trying to figure out, our careers. And Dad was always there and giving that guidance. I found out that Carmen has a similar experience, but the one thing I'll share about cars and Porsches, and some of you know this, but when I turned 18, Beverly was a special treat for me to go to Indiana and get a suit. So, okay, so guess what? You can drive the 911. It's like, okay. I was scared, right? Because actually, the funny thing is, I knew he was selling it to Dr. Heller the next day. So I'm like, okay, I cannot screw this up. So we drive to Indiana, and we're coming back, and it's one of those two lanes that turn into one right before you merge in the expressway. There's like 6 cars in front of us. Like, I want you to drop it down and pass them. No, seriously, now, faster, let's go. Beat everyone. Okay. So I did. And then we get to Wolf Road in kind of Burbridge, near County Line Road there. It's got a bunch of winding whiskers. And he's like, okay, I know the sign says don't go exceed 30. I want you to hit it at 40. Okay. And so I do the first one at 30. And he literally goes, excuse my French, don't be a pussy, hit the next one at 40. Okay. So I hit the next one at like 40 plus. Of course, spin out. And so luckily enough, I had the wherewithal. I kept it. If you guys know the road, it's one lane either way, winding with trees. Kept the 911 that he was selling the next day on the road. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, in Porsches, you never put your foot on the brakes as you're going to a turn. You're going to go in a muted tailspin. You got to accelerate through that. Jeez, thanks, Dad. And I just actually learned this week that he did the same thing to Carmen on the same road. But in the end, Dad always had the right advice on almost anything. And he always knew what to say to us, or to anyone. And almost everyone was able to kind of relate to him and the guidance and whatnot he had. So about 2 months ago, we were over his house, and we were just talking about technology. He says, "Oh, where's the kids?" Well, we pull up our phones. Okay, we're tracking Jackie is over here. We're tracking Williams on this side of the city. He's like, "Oh, the GPS tracker." He's like, "Okay." He's like, "I like that." He's like, "When I go, remember, I'll be the GPS tracker in the sky. I'm watching all your dots and the locations of where you're at." So in closing, she's not here, but Angie told Melissa, thank you very much for all she did. She was the official hospice nurse that had worked with Dad as part of his job. Clearly would come in and gave him grief, which she needed, when, like those damn birds, I hate the birds, Bob, just knew how to needle him the way he needed to be needled. And of course, Angie. The relationship over the past 8 years meant so much to him. The fun, the companionship, the friendship, and then of course the unbelievably selfless care and service that you were able to give him last few months, and of course last few weeks. So just one last thing on the day. So it was Monday, July 11th. So 7-Eleven, lucky day. It's also Slurpee Day, so you can think about that every time you go get your Slurpee on 7-Eleven. But it was surreal and weird. It was just weird. We were a few of us were there, and we'd all gone to sleep because everyone was really tired. And I get a text from Kathy, my wife, at 3:38. I remember this. I didn't hear it, but I woke up and I kept trying to go back to sleep. And all of a sudden I'm like, I hear some noise. So something's going on. So I go upstairs, and I see Angie's up, Carmen's up, baby's up. Dad seemed no change. How are we all up? We don't know. We all just woke up, at the same time, pretty much. Just no noise, no nothing. So, okay, well, I guess it's Dad saying it's time to get the show on the road. It was not long for long goodbyes and things like that. So that morning, that was early, 4 or 5 o'clock. Starts getting lighter outside. Dad was positioned outside of a big sliding glass door, so he could see the lake that some of you know he lived on. And the sunrise started coming up. And I remember just going out there, and it was just very cathartic. I mean, the sun was rising, and you would see over time the rays would hit the lake, and the lake would go. The rays would go straight into the house, like where he was at. And so we pulled up the shade, and he started getting the sunlight on his face, and he started hearing the birds chirping. For all the bird seeds and the planters that are out there, and then he decided to move on. Not too long after that, and it's really odd. We looked up about a half hour later. There was no sun. It was all clouds. It was completely gone away. And then it was just, don't describe it, just about half hour of that little sliver of sun. The sun kind of came back through the clouds enough to say that, yeah, he's here. We got him, and he's in a good spot. So with all that and all those memories, please remember Dr. T, Bobby, Uncle Bob, Gramps, Grandpa T, and Dad. All of those people will be looking after us, guiding us, and of course, mumbling something sarcastic at us with a smile on his face.
I'm going to share some words that Angie prepared as well. So many wonderful memories in our short 8 years, from adventurous and relaxing vacations, sushi and movies, baking, cooking together, to quiet times of watching Boston Legal and Fox News, playing Uno and me winning more than him, which may or may not have bruised his competitive ego, LOL, to everything in between. His generous knowledge, support, sarcasm, guidance, love, and reassurance he gave so freely and without hesitation. I wouldn't change a thing about us. I am so grateful for us. I would do it 1,000,000 times over. The world is a better place for him being here, and a lesser place now that he's gone. I will love and miss you forever. And on behalf of all the kids, as it sounds like we all do, rest in peace. I want to close with the prayer of St. Francis. I believe that this epitomizes Bob. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. Go in peace and continue to love each other. Thank you.